Your nightly news with Tom Johnson begins now.
Good evening. Tasmanians have come out in their thousands, attending sombre Black Lives Matter vigils across the state. Organisers say the situation unfolding in the United States casts a spotlight on what's happening in our own country.
A silent and powerful message. For 8 minutes and 46 seconds, hundreds of Tasmanians knelt on Parliament lawns and at Launceston's Princes Square in a show of solidarity. That time representing the death of African-American man George Floyd.
Here we are time and time again, crying out that Black Lives Matter.
Social distancing crowds turning out for peaceful vigils.
I think globally people want to connect and support this issue of Black Lives Matter. You know, we see racial injustice everywhere.
People turned away in Hobart to watch online, with the event quickly at capacity.
It's nice to know that people care and are here to support.
The demonstration similar to those seen across the world. These signs reflecting the same message.
We really just want to get it out and notice that we are struggling and we are going through a lot, the entire community as well, so we just want to bring them in together.
Attendees reflecting on issues facing Indigenous communities.
It's serious. We've had over 400 deaths since the 1990 Royal Commission or 1991. It's still a problem. We just had another death we just heard on the radio. It's an ongoing issue.
The police are able to clothe themselves with a range of powers that enables them to treat the public and Aboriginal people differently from the way that they are treated by the law.
Hopefully after a while we can all just be in the same group and no one's classed as anything because of their race.
Speakers making impassioned pleas for change.
No one deserves to die or be harmed because of their skin colour.
It's certainly something that needs to be dealt with and should have been dealt with decades ago.
We hope this is an ongoing movement of social change where we can see our people protected.
Events demonstrating Tasmania as a united state. Louise HOUBAER, 7 Tasmania News.
Another Tasmanian institution has succumbed to the global pandemic. With confirmation today, the Royal Hobart Show is cancelled for this year. Organisers desperately tried to keep the event afloat, but say strict government regulations have forced them to make the agonising decision.
For many decades, the Royal Hobart Show has been a Tasmanian staple. But this year, the grounds won't be awash with old machinery, rides or fairy floss. The pandemic wreaking havoc once again, forcing its cancellation.
There's no way we can run the show under its normal format and deal with 20-odd thousand people on show day with the current restrictions in place.
The decision, labelled agonising, meant contacting the hundreds of members, many who have the event as their one reliable source of income.
It is a disappointing outcome for our members because the shows, to many of our members, make up the biggest part of our income.
The board haven't taken it lightly. We've put it off and off just to see if the situation was going to change at all.
So these are the sacrifices that we've all had to make, sadly, and it's been tough. It has absolutely been a very tough time.
Discussions will take place next week about whether certain competitions could be held without onlookers.
We won't be able to run a show as we know it, but we want to leave the door open to some sort of event. But what that looks like is anybody's guess at this stage.
The Royal Agricultural Society expects to lose about $500,000.
We'll get through it. It might just mean we've got to put next year's show on steroids and make it one that everyone will remember.
But there is some good news. Hobart's public holiday will stay on the calendar. And while the Launceston show and myriad smaller events are still up in the air, BURNIE's show is set to go ahead.
We do have a couple of other options, like hosting an event after the new year, or extending our event to be an extra couple of days so we can spread the patrons out a bit more.
Standing strong in the global showdown against the pandemic. Louise HOUBAER, 7 Tasmania News.
A 21-year-old woman remains in hospital tonight after a serious crash on the South Arm Highway early yesterday evening. Tasmania Police says the woman was trapped for a short period of time before emergency services were able to free her. Early investigations have determined excessive speed was a contributing factor. Her 19-year-old female passenger sustained minor injuries. Authorities are reiterating the importance of driving to the conditions, especially at night and on damp roads. The City of Launceston says it's confident a $90 million education precinct will be built despite the turmoil of COVID-19. Private education provider Foundry expects hundreds of students to enrol at the site, but unions argue the plan, partly backed by Commonwealth cash, undermines the TAFE sector.
A glossy impression of Launceston's worst kept secret. From 2023, 500 students could study at a new private education campus in the centre of the city.
We believe that the package is so important because it's going to help us to continue to revitalise the CBD.
A consortium called New Creative Group is developing the project at the Patterson Street car park. Private educator Foundry will run the campus.
So we'll be training young people in creative industries from design right through to digital design, traditional graphic design, film and photography.
But the company is facing scrutiny after it recently failed to pay some of its staff.
There was a 4-day delay in pay that was directly COVID related. All of those matters have been resolved.
$10 million from the public purse will help pay for the $90 million private campus. Unions argue it would be better spent supporting TAFE.
That's devastating for the TAFE sector. Like I said, we're calling out for more money for our infrastructure, and here they're giving out to private for-profit organisations.
In a separate plan, council will also build a new bus interchange at the site, while turning the old Birchall store into an arcade. COVID-19 has caused huge financial headaches in the education sector. This week, the University of Tasmania revealed the crisis could cost it up to $34 million this year. Its Sandy Bay relocation has also been shelved, but there are no such doubts over the Foundry project.
Backers are still there. We're still very confident on what we need in our CBD, and we know that the businesses around Launceston will support it, and it's extremely important at this time.
MCCOMISH, 7 Tasmania News.
After being left high and dry because of COVID-19, boaties are being urged to check their gear before hitting the water. Thousands of Tasmanians are expected to sail into coastal towns this weekend as restrictions ease.
My message is to stay safe, look after each other. If you're out there boating, check your gear. Check your gear, your life jackets, make sure it's safe, it's right up to date.
There is finally some good news for business, with fishing stores reeling in plenty of customers this week. And a trip to Tatlow's Beach at Stanley this morning took a surprise turn for locals, discovering a pygmy right whale stranded on the sand. First reported just after 7:30 this morning, a group of parks and wildlife staff kept watch, keeping it cool as they worked with members of the public to refloat the whale. It was successfully returned back into the sea at around 11:30. Relaxed restrictions has led to Tasmanians returning to beloved recreational activities. Many marked the momentous occasion by going back to nature, with mountains and national parks a popular choice.
It's not just the local wildlife enjoying our national parks anymore. For the first time in months, there's barely a spot free at Mount Field. Ranger Dave couldn't be happier.
It's quite different not having people around, not talking to people. But today, car park's full, visitors are here, they're looking like they're having a good time, so it's really nice to see people come back.
For Waterfalls Cafe owner Rachel, it's been an uncertain few weeks. She's used the downtime to renovate, keeping staff on the job and preparing to reopen. It was short notice, 2 weeks earlier than expected, but she's delighted to see familiar faces returning.
I really didn't know what to expect today. It was one of those days where we were ready for anything. It's been really good. I can definitely say it's busier than it would normally be at this time of year.
For many, it's the first trip out of the house in weeks. They've counted down to this precious day.
They've really been aching to get out and have a bit of a longer run, especially up in the high country.
Yeah, it's good to actually not be trapped in the house. It's bloody cold, but once you get running up a hill, it gets better.
It's just starting to snow here at Mount Field, and while the temperature and the lake behind me might be icy, the atmosphere is anything but. The cold weather has done little to deter walkers who have been keen to come out here for weeks.
It is very cold. I can barely feel my toes actually. Freezing, and my fingers have basically gone numb.
And as we can get out in the great outdoors more this winter, a word from the wise.
You can eat white snow, but not yellow snow.
Proof there's no business like snow business. Ebony ABBLITT, 7 Tasmania News.
Good evening everyone. -5 overnight at Lyowini and just -1 on Mount Wellington today. Burnie and Devonport 12 degrees, while Hobart and Launceston saw a top of 11. Around the state, Flinders Island, the state's top of 15 degrees, 12 for King Island and Smithton, St Helens and Friendly Beach is reaching 11 and 10 degrees for Grove and Strawn. Low-level cloud can be seen spiralling around a low to the west of Flinders Island, and extensive low-level cloud can be seen over the west and south of Tasmania and the Bight. Further out, low-level cloud can be seen over South Australia and the Victorian coast. The cloud seen over Western Australia is due to a complex of low pressure and cold fronts. The remainder of the country is mostly cloud-free. Tomorrow's chart shows a strong high over the Bight and extends a second ridge east over Tasmania. The low and fronts move closer to Western Australia and weaken. South to southwesterly winds tomorrow, 5 to 15 knots, although west to southwesterly winds 15 to 20 knots. A road weather alert for ice is current for northern, eastern and central districts. Partly cloudy and 12 in Hobart tomorrow, Richmond 13, morning frost and 12 in Ouse. Launceston 12 degrees with a morning frost, mostly sunny and 12 in Devonport, Deloraine 11. 13 in Burnie tomorrow, showers and 12 in Strawn, Curry a top of 13. And in the east, St Helens and Swansea 13 degrees and partly cloudy and 13 in Whitemark. Looking on to Monday now, showers about the west and far south, fine elsewhere. Showers about the north, west and far south on Tuesday. And similar weather on Wednesday with the showers extending statewide. 21 in Perth tomorrow, Adelaide partly cloudy, Melbourne 13 and a sunny 32 in Darwin. And currently Hobart 6 degrees and partly cloudy, mostly clear and 5 in Launceston, and Devonport mostly clear and 6 degrees. And Tom, that's the weather.
Cold, cold and cold. Thank you very much for that, Chelsea. And before we leave you tonight, the biggest display ever at the Australian Museum in Sydney has had to be postponed because of COVID. The King Tutankhamun exhibition was supposed to open in the summer, drawing up to 800,000 visitors. Billed as the largest and most impressive Tutankhamun display to ever leave Egypt, it was also meant to showcase the museum's $57 million renovation. It's not known if or when the exhibition will go ahead. Let's hope it does. Well, that is all your news for now. Thank you so much for joining us and have a great night.
A lot of them don't have